Evolve 360, a holistic approach to life, is an exploration of learning through experience to transform individually and culturally as a whole by taking a 360-degree look at our quality of life, including the limiting beliefs, worn-out paradigms, and destructive habits that have led us to where we are today, and to instead create or revolutionize a new life vision that brings greater peace, appreciation, fulfillment, clarity, happiness, and joy as we ultimately evolve. So in our last episode, Shelley and I introduced sex as the most powerful force in the universe, and that if it's harnessed through sex transmutation, this energy can be a force behind manifesting great creativity and wealth. In this episode, which is the first of two parts, we are going to explore this further by diving into the personal dynamics that occur on an individual or micro level when we are in relation to one another. We're going to shed the illusions we have surrounding marriage and divorce by introducing better ways to communicate and negotiate on that micro level through tapping into sacred sexuality. So let's get naked. Welcome to the Evolve 360 show with hosts
Cheli Grace
and Shelley Devine. Hey, soul sister.
Hey, girlfriend. Today's going to be a really crazy show.
You know, we're getting naked.
Naked. Well, we decided to do this show called Getting Naked. I know what you guys are thinking. We're going to take our clothes off, but actually we're going to be shedding our illusions. And the illusions that we put into, our lives when we have relationships with ourselves, with other people in our lives. Sometimes when we're in marriages or even a relationship that's difficult, we turn this illusion on. And even in our place of business with things, we have this like utopia thing going, and it's really not the right thing because we've got to get rid of our illusions. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. And, Shelley and I were preparing for the show, and we are going through so much transformation that to us, it's so important to know ourselves on an individual level, and we call it the micro level. It's time to have courage, stand up, communicate. And, sometimes that makes us feel vulnerable, but vulnerability is the straight path to the heart. It is a direct access point. And we're here to share with you about all of this, to just, make you feel better. And through communication, we can heal the separateness that we sometimes feel, that isolation, that loneliness that we get, because we have to have communication with ourselves. Sometimes people have said, are you having communion with yourself? It's like an interaction with you to get to know yourself before you can share yourself with someone else. And I love how Rumi put it. He said, the task is not only to love, but to seek to dissolve all the barriers within yourself that you have built against it. So, hey, Shell, are you ready to get naked?
I'm ready.
So we're going to
shed those illusions.
Oh my gosh, and I know that for myself, I'm going to speak about myself, that for a while there in my life, I would only see my life through 90 degrees. We're all about 360 holistic life, Evolve 360. But I know for a chunk of it, I was just looking through it through a 90-degree angle. And basically, I don't know about you, Shell, but I would just tell myself these stories that were illusions. And everything's great. Yeah. But you look back and you're like, wow. It really wasn't. It just,
Well, sometimes we want to escape from some forms of emotional trauma. I know for myself, that 90-degree view, which definitely affected my marriage, is I had family members that were, that were sick with cancer, and I couldn't imagine them leaving the planet, so to speak, and dying. And I was contending with that. And then the fear and the thought, if my husband left me, I was so afraid of that. So I developed some fantasies.
Right.
you know, fantasies, and just kind of put my direction into like believing things that weren't really true. And I'm like, how does that happen? Our mind can play a lot of tricks on us. For sure.
Yes, it can. And also, you know, it's about cause and effect.
Yeah.
And I know that it's all about your background too and your upbringing. I was, you know, brought up in my culture, you know, women didn't speak up. I went to an all-girl Catholic school, and the nuns were like really strict. You really couldn't express yourself, or sometimes you'd be, you know, slapped, which is horrible. But I wanted to be liked, and I wanted to be a good girl. So I would always, under my relationships with men, always be like the perfect damsel. You know, we've talked about the archetype of the damsel. I would just, everything was so good at that 90-degree angle, until one day you wake up and you're like, I want to be liberated because I just can't stand being good. Yeah. So we're going to set an intention for today's show. And we want to say that the best way to communicate is to learn to listen first to yourself and then to others. Because becoming silent and listening to how your feelings are, how your energy is working in your body, it's the best language for us to understand communication. We can, you know, when we become silent, we listen to ourselves, and we really, like we were saying, you know, shed that illusion. Is that really the story that is really going on in your life with your relationship? Or is it the story that you're creating, which is an illusion and it's not true? So I don't know about you, but I love to talk, and I find myself a lot of times that, you know, I got into situations and the energy just sat inside, but I wasn't expressing my feelings. I was just expressing what other people wanted to hear. And that really was detrimental with my marriage. It was really detrimental because I just didn't speak up. I didn't convey, and, you know, and
sometimes you're afraid to, right? You're afraid that what you're going to say to somebody that you love is going to hurt their feelings. And I know that was the case for me. And I think it was the case for my ex-husband too. I think he was afraid to say anything for fear of hurting my feelings about things, you know, feeling certain ways of, you know, outside the marriage, or things that you want that you're not receiving, and you're afraid you're going to hurt your spouse's, you know, feelings. And I think that in so many ways can cause a rift, because you're not really being authentic to yourself and communicating what you need to say. These are my needs. You know, they're not being fulfilled, or whatever it might be. That's just an example. It can be so many different things. But
I totally agree with you, because I know that I'm guilty of doing that. Not speaking, you know, now with the marriage that I'm in now, oh my gosh, nobody holds me back. You know, I'm always speaking my mind, because we learn and we evolve, and we know what doesn't serve us. And if you really want to be in alignment, you've got to share your feelings with those people that you love, those people that you work with. And it's not easy getting there, because, you know, we never want to hurt anybody's feelings, but in depth, you're hurting yourself so much. Yeah. And, you know, we were talking about marriage. You know, marriage really came about way back, like in the 1300s, and it was basically for power. And this is part of our power trilogy. And families used to just, you know, pin together people to just get married to become, you know, wealthier, own more land. And that just evolved into the marriage that we have today, which, you know, two people fall in love, they get married, they want to have a family. And we have all different kinds of marriages. We have same-sex marriages, and, you know, all different kinds of things going on. And it's basically all about love. And I just love love. It's all about love. I just love love.
Yeah. And the best place to start with love is loving yourself first. And then you attract the, you know, love for yourself with another individual. But I think it's important to know that, like you just said, the history of why we get married, but then also how did divorce all start taking place? Why do people get divorced? And, you know, the whole fall of a paradigm. So like divorce law, I just, you know, I saw that the research that you did, it's fascinating, was enacted in 1857, like when you could really get a divorce.
It's called the Matrimonial Causes Act. That already gets me like a little nervous. Like it's like breaking the law. Like you get married forever, right? That's what it used to be. In fact, people would get married forever and they would never divorce because it was against the law to divorce, especially women. I mean, we've come such a long way, ladies. We really have.
Oh, for sure. I mean, you probably couldn't. I think back in the day, they put, like, if there was anything wrong with the marriage, the husband would lock the woman up so he could, put her in a psych ward or something. And then,
or a convent.
A convent. Yeah, that would be
like
the other
Henry
thing.
VIII, they either cut your head off, or if they kind of liked you, they'd stick you in a convent forever.
Oh, Henry VIII was brutal. That's when it all started, right? Ooh, that's kind of when the Reformation of the church and everything. He had 6 wives, and 2 of them, I think 2 or 3 of them, had their heads chopped off because one was accused of adultery. The other, there was one that actually did. I think it was, what was it?
Catherine? No, not Cat. What?
Catherine? Anne Boleyn.
Anne Boleyn. Yeah, I think she cheated on him with her brother, I think. I mean, I saw the movie.
That's what they say, but they they think somehow she was undermined because she was a type of woman that went out and she spoke her
mind. She spoke her
truth.
Yeah.
And the thing about her, though, is I don't think she could bear a child.
Really?
I think that was the case. I think she might have had miscarriages, and then there was some deception or whatever. And with one of, I don't know who it was in the, upper guys or whatever, but got the king's ear and said she basically, has spoken treason and adultery towards you, which wasn't, I guess, apparently the case. And then it was like Henry went in and chop off her head. And then the big joke was anybody that he was going to get married to again, they're like, I don't want that happening.
No kidding.
I mean, there were women that did marry him again, like he was flirtatious, and stuff. I guess he had a lot of charisma.
Was a womanizer. Woo.
Yeah. And so he married, I think it was like Jane Seymor.
Yes. Yeah.
But she died. And then after that, he had an annulled marriage. She was the only one that I think got out like fairly well. And his last wife got
out with her life.
Yeah. And then after that, there was a young one that was executed for adultery. And I'm thinking, wow, poor ladies, man. But this is where divorce all kind of started. It was like kind of with him.
It started with him because back then the church was so involved in people's lives back in 1857, even before then. And I know that they had to get married in the church, but he really wanted to separate from the church. And that's a whole nother, historical background that we can do one day. But I just, then I was doing more research and the big change, I guess it was around the late 60s, early 70s, were the Divorce Reform Act then, because before a woman couldn't petition to get divorced. Men could, but women couldn't. And they had to prove abuse or, all kinds of difficult things that sometimes are just very difficult to prove.
Yeah.
So at that time, then things changed and, we have the laws that we have today, which, it's crazy because I'm really not for divorce, but I've been divorced because you always want to get into a relationship that was going to be solid and forever. But sometimes things don't work out that way. And I think one of the reasons why it didn't work out for me was because I was needed to grow into my own person. And like we're talking about, speak up your mind, speak about, what you really, like or dislike, and not just be nice all the time, because nice doesn't get you anywhere in the end. It just gets you upset and divorced.
Yeah.
It's horrible. Yeah.
I mean, eventually too, as you're on that life growth span and we come into interaction with people, like, when we're younger, we kind of want to get married or we want to have a significant other and we want to, proceed through the rest of our life with that person. And sometimes when it doesn't work out, we're like, what do we do? Were we enough? Were we,
I know, right?
And we start to ask these questions, especially, like if we're the ones rejected or if we decide to move on, like away from, that significant other, and how it all occurs, like the energy dynamics and the lack of communication or, just the
lack
lack
of
and the loss.
communication.
Yeah.
The lack of communication. And a lot of times, you know, let's say we all evolve. We are forever moving forward. And a lot of times, I know what happened to me, I just totally changed and evolved. And because there wasn't communication, things didn't work out, because sometimes that other person doesn't move forward with you. They don't evolve with you.
Right, right.
And
Yeah. And I think it's kind of funny because it depends on the level of, like, you know, like some people, their marriages work because there's, you know, a great deal of compassion and patience when somebody isn't growing on your level, or maybe you're not growing on their level. I mean, I don't know, it could be vice versa. And and those relationships, I think, have become rarer in our generation, as opposed to maybe when you couldn't get divorced, or when you didn't have the financial capabilities to get divorced. Where now it's I think divorce was kind of like a wealthy person's way to get out of marriage, you know, back in way back. And now it's been more of, you know, it's available to pretty much, you know, everybody.
But now, it's interesting that you bring that point up, because that's one of the things that when we were studying sacred contracts, I've had girlfriends that have been married for 35 years, 30 years. I mean, they have these long-term marriages, and they have great relationships with their husbands. And then you're like, well, you know, you're thinking, geez, sometimes, you know, I think I'd like to be married like to someone for 30 years. And then I'm thinking, geez, I don't know if I would. Yeah. But it all, you know, I did a lot of research, and I studied tremendously when we were together going through Carolyn's course on sacred contracts. And a lot of it has to do also with your life purpose and why you were here. And sometimes it's because you've got to continue moving forward to, I don't know, reach more people. And sometimes that's part of your change, your own evolution, your own personal evolution. I think for me, it's been that way. So it's
same here, even though I didn't know it. And I mean, I did know it, but I didn't want to, like, I resisted it, you know, like we resist it because it requires a lot of endurance sometimes, because the universe or, you know, life wants you to pick up pieces in other areas that maybe you were supported in, and now you need to learn them on your own, how to do it on your own. Because a marriage, there's a lot of energetic dynamics that happen that are super positive. But you both have to be on the same page for your own, say, sacred or spiritual development as a
and
human
your evolvement, right? And your evolvement, and I think that comes, and you hit it on the head. Compassion, you know, communication. I think it's tolerance. You know, allowing the other person their own space. I mean, there's so many dynamics. I mean, I could write a book today, you know, and because I mean, I wish I knew now what I didn't know when I was 20. Right. Because, you know, you try and avoid so much heartache, but it's part of your evolution. It's part of your growth, and it's part of being able to understand yourself even more. And, you know, what you need to work on, because I know that I've worked on some sides of my life that maybe if I would have worked on them way back, you know, 20, 30 years ago, I maybe still be with the same guy after 30 years. I don't know. But it all boils down to that when we're in relationships, being married, being in a partnership, being with a significant other, or even the relationships that we have, we're going to talk about more of those, like with work related relationships, the dynamics of that. The communication is key, because if you don't have it, there's so much that can go on, so much.
And what happens in your home life expands into your external, you know, exterior life, into your careers, and some of the same things that you do in your marriage, you will do in the workplace as well. Like some of the same, and you'll attract similar things, only it'll be on a group level instead of in the micro level.
Like power play.
Right? Power plays, certain things like that. They'll show up.
Like if you're passive aggressive with your spouse or your partner,
Yeah.
You know, that kind of like, you're nice, but behind the scenes, you're doing things, you know, that, you know, maybe you have to do. And then in the workforce, you show up and you're not really your authentic self. And I think that's what we're trying to say. You're authentically not yourself, because you haven't been empowered. You don't have the self-esteem to stand up and say, you know, I really don't want hamburger 3 days in a row. You know, thanks, but, you know, so you keep eating that hamburger every day. And some people love having the same food every day. I don't. I like variety.
Yeah.
So, you know, and then one day you just like throw the hamburger, like, you have one of those hamburger fits, but you know, it's just being able to speak your mind. And, you know, let's face it, we don't have to be rude. We can show the element of grace and show the element of compassion by telling someone that you don't actually like what they're doing. And I don't like what you're doing, you know, so.
Yeah. And that works if the other person is receptive and doesn't take it too personally and says, okay, they have the ultimate compassion coming back and saying, okay, honey, how can I make it better, or whatever? What can I do? You know, what do I need to do? You know, and if that doesn't happen, well, it can cause rifts and problems. And I mean, I think the biggest problems with communication with a couple are any sort of criticism, defensiveness, stonewalling, or, you know, contempt and resentment. And those are all going to lead to the big D, you know, in a relationship. All those sorts of ways of communicating will lead to.
Or non-communication.
Yeah.
I mean, like the silent treatment for like 3 days.
Yeah, stonewalling.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
Which is not good, because at the end of the day, it's just the wall just gets bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger, and it's harder to break down at the end.
Yeah.
And
then, so for our audience that listens, what is your go-to like bad communication skill? Like when you get in an argument, you know, like do you like, I'm not going to talk to him for the next 24 hours, like, you know, the stonewalling or whatever, or are you going to criticize? Or I know I've been through all of those. All of them, every single
so
one.
have I.
I've criticized. I've been defensive. I've stonewalled. I'm not talking to him until he comes to me.
I don't think I've done that one, because I like to talk so much. I want to get the last word in.
And then the contempt. You know how contempt comes out, and resentment. It's like, it's that look. You know, like it's just like when they say something and you just look at them like, you know, like disgust. And that's really mean, but I've experienced being on that end of it, and I'm like, oh, something's up. You know, he doesn't love me anymore. You know,
because we all want to be loved and liked and appreciated. And, you know, sometimes that's why we don't speak up, because we just want to be loved, liked, and appreciated. But you have to. You've got to share your feelings. You've got to tell people exactly how you feel. And I know that if you do it in a state of the immediate, when it's bothering you, it's a lot easier to communicate than when you wait and you wait and you wait, and it festers in you, and then you don't know how to address it. And then all of a sudden there's a blow up, because you have to, I'm from the school of thought today that if something is not, you know, it doesn't sit right with me, I'm not in alignment with it, energetically it's not feeling good, I talk about it.
Yeah.
No,
You gotta, you can't let it sit there and fester. You gotta be, you know, and sometimes it's really scary to do, depending on the subject matter. And I guess some ways to do that, sometimes if you're really afraid to say something to your significant other or your spouse, I heard this, I don't know who I heard this from but to sometimes whisper it if you're really afraid, and like snuggle. Yeah, like snuggle and whisper it, like, and don't look at them even. Don't look at them even. Just kind of whisper it, have them hold you. You know, you could be vice versa and hold your partner and whisper it, and it just makes it come in, seep in a little bit more. It's kind of almost coming in unconsciously, maybe from someplace else and not your partner. So your partner, you know, like, you don't get angry with them or defensive or whatever.
Something like that, huh?
What's that?
Like you whisper in their ear, like exactly how you feel if they don't do something. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, but it's really like when you're kind of in an intimate, you know, an intimate setting, like I wouldn't say like, hugging, well, maybe, but like hugging face to face, it's a little bit different because then that brings in the whole sex, to me, I think it brings in a little bit more sexiness when you're like frontal to one another in the hug. You get like kind of more like if you're with your partner, you get like more of the sexual urges happening maybe, where if you're behind, it's a little less intrusive or something. So they're kind of like behind and their face in your face is going the same way. But if you whisper it kind of out and away and not at your partner and they're listening to hear you, that's what I mean. That's how you would do it. And it's a little bit softer approach and it doesn't strike your partner. And this is all with energy dynamics back and forth that we're going to get into a little bit, towards the, the ending part of the show. I'm going to speak a little bit about the energy dynamics that pass between male and female energy. This passes between, human beings in different ways, but if you're in close relationship with them. So it's a cute little, I thought it was actually a really good, I've never actually tried it. I think that would work really
cool.
good.
And I can't wait for you to share it with the audience because I really found it fascinating.
Yeah.
Really did it. But I like that. I tend to write like little notes. Hi, I love you. But I'm going to share that, little notes. I like little
that's cute.
Yeah.
I like that. That would work. I like love notes.
Love notes. Hey, I love you, but you better put the toothpaste back in the place that it belongs.
I know, the toilet paper's going the wrong way. I know.
I know, right?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. But anyways, getting back to
marriage. Yeah, marriage and divorce. Like one of the things that I noticed is like in the beginning, like a marriage is all about unity and a divorce is all about separation. Yeah. And the marriage, you're placing, you're bestowing all this beautiful love and grace and your affection onto someone. You're giving them like grace is coming through you and you're just, and it feels so good. You're loving them. You just think they're amazing and you're just loving on them. You can't do enough for them, like it's just amazing. But the interesting thing about divorce and this is what we do to one another in divorce, typically going through a divorce. And I think divorce, the way it's structured now has to change, but you disgrace your partner on some level. You humiliate them through either shame, betrayal, or abandonment of some kind. And it's all about like this lack and loss. So it's all the other types of emotions, which I think is fascinating. You end up, in a marriage, you're going to learn all the positive sides of the emotional scale. Through divorce, you learn all the negative sides of the emotional scale. Isn't that fascinating?
It is, but divorce is so sad. I mean, it
is. It totally is. It destructs your life. But a marriage can build your life if it's a good marriage.
Oh, divorces totally destroy lives. But here's what I'm thinking. I'm thinking because we're here also talking archetypally. And I know that like when you start dating someone or you start like seeing somebody, all of your archetypes come out, like the lover, the companion, the negotiator, the communicator. Everybody is like so deliciously on point. Think about the first couple of times you go out and everything's so nice, and then you get married. And then those people that were showing up at your banquet, the lover, the companion, the communicator, and the negotiator are all of a sudden maybe starting to show a little bit of their shadow side.
Oh, yeah.
The little shadow side that comes out with all of those little archetypes, which are energies. Yeah. Because now people are feeling more comfortable with each other. People, get a little complacent. And it's important to keep that spark going on. And there's so many different ways of doing it. And I think, Shelley, you have something really cool that we're going to share with everybody later on how we can do that. Yeah. But, it's like a banquet and a feast. And then And then later you see those archetypes just evolving into their own. And it's important. And we're going to teach you later on how to balance both sides of it, because we always have to be in balance.
Yeah.
It's a positive and negative. It's like a car battery, right? If the
Yeah.
car battery isn't positive and negative, like we're charging that battery, it's going to blow up.
Yeah.
So the same way with, you know, your relationships, it has to always be in balance and flux, going back and forth. And, you know, I used to always say, you know, relationships are 50-50, but they're more than that. I think it's more of an ebb and flow. You have to be more in a flow of it, because sometimes you might give a little bit more to that person and that person will give a little, but it's all about how much, you know, you're there for each other and how much you're there, you know, supporting each other emotionally,
Sure.
in all ways, in all different kinds of ways.
Yeah, you have to nurture love. Love is an action. It's a verb, you know, so you have to constantly nurture that through action, you know, towards your partner, to maintain a healthy relationship.
You have to, and it's hard work, let's face it.
Well, because the whole process is a growth process.
Right.
It's stages of your life that you are growing on a spiritual level. And that takes time. It takes self-improvement constantly.
It's endurance.
Yeah, and it is endurance.
It's endurance, because through, like, what are the vows? Through thick or thin, you know, until death do you part. I mean, I don't even know if they say those vows like that anymore.
I don't know. I think they must, but it does not apply anymore, because nobody's doing it till death do they part. They got divorced now.
That was Henry VIII, you know.
Yeah.
That was
they got rid of that one, man. Yeah. So it's not quite the same. And it's interesting, you know, like people, you know, oftentimes I think too is some of the things, this is one of the things that I noticed about, like, you know, after you get divorced and you're starting anew, and
it's so hard.
My gosh, it's really hard, because you end up attracting a lot of the similar things that were in the original relationship, because you haven't grown to shift and change or seen them clearly. And some of the things that happen through a divorce, these negative things that occur, these emotions that come up, are played out. We attract what we are inside, and we still attract the same things. And people often wonder, why am I attracting, you know, like some of the shadowy sides, shadowy sides of myself in this person. I didn't see it initially, like what Shelley was saying, but now I see it. And then, is that in, you know, like, it finally starts to dawn on you, is that in me? You know?
Exactly. And maybe you have to take a step back and do some work on you. I know the last time I got divorced, I took a big time out. I didn't date, and I really worked a lot on myself, because I just, you know, first of all, I was healing. And I think you need to go through a healing period, because it's a loss. It's a separation. It's a divorce. And then you have to work, because I just wanted to, I don't know, I was growing in a different way, and I just wanted to take care of myself. And I think a lot of times we tend to forget that we've got to take care of ourselves first before we can move on, and before we can share our lives with someone else. And that was very healing. You know, I hadn't done that in depth like I had, but, you know, it was very important for me at that time to do that.
Yeah, and the dynamic too between, you know, the sexes, I guess. There's so many things that are coming to light now, where we have so much information on the internet, or there's so many courses that we can take which weren't available probably, you know, when you were I know they weren't available when I got divorced, and they're available now, that you can learn more about the dynamics that might happen within a relationship, and what is definitely not going to work in one. And you can work on improving yourself so you can acquire the life that you want to have and the relationship that you want to have with somebody. But it does take time to actually do that, or you're repeating, you know, worn out patterns and habits that you have on a, you know, regular basis. I mean, you'll have, you know, oftentimes you'll hear these women, why am I attracting a guy that just doesn't emotionally attach, you know, like, or,
and that
you know,
happens a lot.
It happens a tremendous amount. I experienced that recently, and I'm just like, I can't, I was like, you know what, I can't put, my big thing is I couldn't stand being rejected anymore.
Right.
It was so like, because I was so rejected by my ex-husband, but I rejected him for a period of time, and then he rejected me on every count. But it gets very confusing. But then that's what I was attracting in my dating too. And I'm like,
oh wow,
oh, it was like, are you kidding me? Until I was just like, you know what, I'm enough. and I'm like, I'm not dealing with that anymore. You know, like it would send me off emotionally. And the thing about whatever is going on inside us, we attract. And if we have powerful emotions, whether they're negative or positive, anger and resentment can be powerful emotions. And if we're concentrating on that, then we're just going to attract more of it. And this is the dynamic that happens inside a marriage. And it also is about our capacity to create. If we want to create more, if we have other things in our lives that we want to do, and we're not feeling fulfilled in those relationships, these other emotions are going to stir up in us.
And that, you're absolutely right. And then guess what? When you show up in the workplace, if you're leading your teams, if you're a boss, if you're running a company, that starts trickling out of you from that, your energy centers into that. Absolutely. It's like it permeates it. And sometimes it's very negative. Yeah. And people, you know, they're like, wow, what's wrong with the boss, or what's wrong with her? You know, boy, he's having a bad day. Yeah. But it's because you haven't worked on your internal self. And that's why when I went through my last divorce, I really took a long time. I took a long time, and I worked on myself because I know that I was deeply, you know, I was hurting because it's hurtful, and just wanted to take care of me. I mean, and in the past, you know, when you're young, you jump from one relationship to the other. And I think as you get older, you're like, you know, what you're saying, Shelley, is true. You know, you start attracting the same kind of person and the same kind of energy. And you're like, you know, I want something different. You know, I don't want to have, you know, chocolate macadamia nuts anymore. I want, you know, I want the white truffle.
Right, exactly.
Chocolate. You know, I want the white truffle chocolate. I don't want the dark chocolate macadamia nut. You know, I'm done with that. And you keep seeing these dark chocolate macadamia nuts show up everywhere.
Oh, they're all over the place. You're like, what is this?
Exactly. Or even I've had girlfriends that have been in relationships with, you know, men, or even, check this out. So you've been with someone for 7 years, and they you know, you want to get married. I know this person wanted to get married. They never committed. So they broke up. The guy meets somebody 3 months later, 4 months later, they're married. What's up with that?
Yeah. Exactly.
What's up with that?
Yeah. And it's something to do with your own vibration, and self-esteem is a huge one. Like this is one thing that Carolyn mentioned years ago, and it really struck me, is you have to kind of almost marry yourself. You have to love yourself, every aspect, and know yourself before you can even get out there and love somebody else truly, and be solid in a relationship. And I always thought I had that. I mean, but now I look at it and I'm like, the universe and the world has required more of me. There was things that I didn't know, like my Damsel didn't know, you know, and now I see those things where I relied so much on an older paradigm of what the exchange of energy between a male and a female was. And my ex-husband, I think, was in that too. And this is all growing, not just in our own home together, but it also grew externally out in the world, because it just wasn't, I found it fascinating when we were going through our separation and divorce. I was like, you know, we really love each other. He and I really loved each other. We were crazy about each other. We really had like really some good things, you know, like I thought was a really good relationship.
Right.
However, there were some foundational things that were amiss, but overall, we really cared about one another. But for the long term, I thought it was funny. There was all these people around us getting divorced. I'm like, what do people have to learn? I just had this crazy sense of something happening externally through the ethers, you know, like this is happening to everybody, you know, everybody is like 50% of marriages are ending in divorce. I'm like, and they seem like the perfect couple together, you know, like, and I'm like, what is going on? And some people, you know, separated, they ended up working it out and stayed married. Others got divorced. But I was like, what's the dynamic here? And I was always kind of like asking that. And then of course it was like, you know, Carolyn was saying, you got to really know yourself, and those fears that I had in my relationship about, you know what, I want to say no right now because I don't want to do this or that. And I felt uncomfortable, especially when it comes to sex and finances. Like sex and finances become a huge issue within couples. And we talked about this in our last episode on sex and power, and we talked about sex transmutation and how that energy can play a role in the creative forces of your life and creating your life. And when you're doing that with your partner. Now, this could be, I'm going to talk man and woman relationships, but this can be whoever carries the male role in your relationship or the female, just to clarify. I'm not, you know, it's like this works for everybody, but it's just, I have masculine attributes as well as feminine attributes. And, you know, like men have feminine and masculine attributes. It doesn't matter. Yeah, they're energies. So the dynamics of energies, now in some of our last podcasts, we talked about the chakra system. But what's really fascinating, when we start to get into power between one another, the female is always the receiver. She's the negative, you know, yin energy, like in yoga, if you've heard of yin yoga, well, that's the feminine kind of stuff. And then the masculine is always the positive and the giver. We've had that wrong in the bedroom for men. Like, you know, like it's always been the reverse. I mean, like it's always the woman who's supposed to be giving. And we see that, I think, in the media and everything. And that's actually not like really how it's supposed to be, which is fascinating to me. The woman is supposed to receive like the penis, you know, in the vagina, and then when that happens, it's like she's getting like she's receiving his energy, his power, and his security and safety are in that root chakra, and she's receiving that from him. And then what that does, the exchange comes up the chakra system, and from her belly, the orange center at the solar plexus, or the sacral area, that goes out to him, and that gives him all this creative juice and life force energy of all like pleasure and the joys of life. He starts to feel that because he senses it all down in that area, and then it comes out, and then he takes that energy and fires it up, and he brings it into the solar plexus, and what how he would give to his wife. And this is where a lot of relationships, when we're young and we're getting married and we're just starting out, because this is a self-esteem area, and this is how we, you know, like if somebody says something, it's what we feel like. We feel insulted about something. We're sensitive. And so what happens is when he's getting all this kind of creative juices flowing, and maybe he's out being the career guy and, you know, bringing home the bacon and doing everything, and she's home cooking it up. Well, there comes a time where then he has to give her, she has to receive from him his status. And that status helps elevate her to become more empowered within herself. So she needs to feel supported that way. And so she'll receive that. So her self-esteem will grow, but she acquires that through him. Now, this doesn't have to happen this way all the time. We can do this on our own, but in the dynamic of two,
That's
It works.
fascinating, Shelley.
It works way better. It works way better. Sexually satisfying you as a individual, and financially it works better, because then you get into the whole transmutation power.
Yeah, I was going to say that's sex transmutation.
Yes, and if you have this wonderful dynamic going between the energies, between spouse, you know, he's giving her this okay to be herself. But what often happens in those situations, competition happens. He starts to be fearful. Oh, she's getting a little better than me. She's getting a little feistier. It's like back with, you know, King George or whatever, and Anne Boleyn, who's out speaking her truth, and she's like, you know what? I'm gonna wheel and deal. I'm the queen now.
Exactly.
I'm gonna lay down some law, or I'm gonna do something. And maybe he, you know, like there becomes a competitive aspect, which the energy, a power play could start to take place. Right. And then it never moves up. Well, if she does receive that proper energy of support, and she goes out and starts to be creative and maybe becomes a CEO and does her thing, well, then it rises up into the heart, and then her love towards him becomes completely unconditional. Wow. And then he receives that. And that unconditional love just is another rocket fuel for him. Mm-hmm. to feel like I can do anything. And it brings in that kind of goddess energy, start, you know, wiggling, that you guys are super powerful, and you guys can start to create this life and this, you know, but you have to be congruent. Everything has to be congruent, and everything has to be aligned. And the big power here is love, but through this sexual transmutation. It's how it works through the body, and it works up through the throat chakra to the third eye, out to the crown, and then all the way up to, you start tapping into your sacred contracts. And it's a beautiful dynamic if we don't lose sight of our vision together in the dynamics of being a couple, and we stay true. We have high ethics, values, and we're all both in alignment with one another. But you always have to tap in to make sure that that's really, you know, what's still occurring and happening. And that gets challenging for sure.
It does, because the day-to-day life can be exhausting, and you have kids, and you know, how do you juggle all this? And on top of that, you got to be the goddess, you know, par excellence.
Oh, superwoman, you know, like I got to do this, that, and the other thing.
Exactly. But I think it starts with tiny moments of just, you know, sharing, you know, sitting close to each other at home, just tiny moments that you can start doing, little things that is going to lead up to the moment of what we were just talking about. But you have to start small. You can't just one day, you know, open the bedroom door and go, okay, now let's do some sex transmutation. Are you ready? Because, you know, your significant other, your husband or your wife, they're going to look at you and they're going to go, what?
Yeah, right. I know. Yeah, I mean, being playful is always great. You know, like touch is always great. Using the other senses. I mean, that's all a part of Tantra and stuff, is using, you know, the 5 senses, and then the intuition starts kicking in, because it's all, everything that we're talking about are skills that you learn. Yeah, it's not like taught to us. We don't intuitively kind of know it. We know there's something there. Like you could start, like, if you're on the right path. I mean, like, a lot of this stuff that I'm speaking about today, I didn't know about it. I went and saw it, like looked it up. Shelley and I went to a course together. We didn't find that out, but like, I mean, we were I keep bringing that damn course up. I'm sorry. That course. It was just such a funny thing.
Oh my gosh, that course was a trip.
Yeah, right? Yeah. It really was. I mean, we had a blast by the pool.
Oh, we always have
later.
Yeah. But you gotta really, you gotta ask a lot more questions. I mean, this was like way back. We were like so young. Yeah. And, you know, young and naive and ready to learn, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Thank God we tapped into our intuition.
Yeah. And I forgot where I was going with that about the sex thing, but like, I think when you're younger, I was learning about sex and stuff, but I think I intuitively knew, like, I mean, I can, you know, not to get too or whatever in my private life, but I mean, some of those tantric things came in naturally in my relationship with my ex-husband. And And it was like, oh, and it's not anything that I studied. I mean, we take a little, like hear something or whatever and look at it. But there's breath work, there's sensual touch, and this whole kind of energy. And I mean, I can remember raising Kundalini energy up through the chakra system, but I didn't really know enough about the transmutation and the power of it to connect, with my partner. And it's fascinating to me now that I'm like, oh, wow, but you have to be on the same page with your partner to be able to do that. And it takes practice, and it's a learned skill. And I bet you anybody, like if you're listening to this show today, you must, I mean, it's something that is innately human. And there's probably, you've experienced maybe a little taste of it, but you didn't know what it was. And you're like, oh, I really liked that. Yeah, but I don't know how to get there again. It's like, okay, well, you gotta you gotta start practicing some of this stuff, you gotta you gotta put some work in. It's like anything that we learn in our lives now. Communication is a skill.
Totally
you have to learn how to,
and I've learned how to shut up, because sometimes I just talk too much, right? And now it's like, okay, maybe I shouldn't say anything. I don't need to have the last word. That's my lesson in this marriage is like, okay, it's all cool. But I have a huge open communication with my husband, and I thank God every day for that. But I don't think I would have gotten married again if that's not where I was at, because that was something that was lacking before. And sometimes when you're lacking something, you're like, okay, this is a non-negotiable. Right. And I always tell my girlfriends, you have to have your non-negotiables, things that you are not willing, because when you're in a relationship, you're always negotiating. Right. But sometimes we have to hold, fast and true to ourselves and your non-negotiables. Yeah. So are we going to learn some?
Well, I was just thinking when you were saying like those non-negotiables, I can remember I got a little story, a pet peeve. Okay. And this is a dynamic. Okay. I'm just going to ask, like people out there, you're in your marriage or whatever, your relationship, and you're feeling maybe like some negativity in certain areas about your significant other. And it's like, how do you manage that? But one of the things, this is a key thing. It's whatever you are, that really annoys you about your partner is something you do yourself.
Wow, that's
the perfect example of this is I used to always annoy my ex, because he would go on this, like he would be talking, and I would listen. I consider myself a really good listener. Now I'm like I got motor mouth, because all those years, all those years of like listening to everybody else, now I'm like making up for it. But what he would get really irritated with me, because I would kind of do one of these things where he took it as I was interrupting him, but it kind of ruined his train of thought, because I'd be like, oh yeah, oh good, like I would interject sometimes. And then sometimes, I did interrupt him because I was so excited about what he was saying, and I wanted to say, yeah, blah, 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 whatever, to add to it, and then listen some more. So he would get so irritated with me. But the funny thing is whenever I would be like describing something or talking about something, oh my God, he would always interrupt me. Always.
I mean, like, yes, I totally get that one.
Yeah. And I'm like, but it was like a big, like, oh my God, like irritated, like after a while. And then finally we worked kind of through it, through years of whatever, but I never could tell him. I was always aware of that, but I could never tell him. Right. And without hurting his feelings. And now it's like, oh, whatever. It's why I don't even care anymore, but back when you're in the same household. So then too, I became more aware of that, out in the workforce. Right. And because I would find myself doing that to other people, because I get so excited. I'm like, like, oh, like, and then I want to blab. I just want to blab and speak me, Right.
So you were aware.
Yes.
You became aware. And I think that's a part of growing and evolving, is that you become aware. I've become aware that I don't have to have last word.
Yeah, that's cool.
I know, because you kind of, because you want to get your point across, because that person is listening, and you start butting heads.
Yeah, right.
And it's like, okay, well, maybe I'll just come across it in a different angle, in a different way.
Yeah.
And that's what I've learned, you know, timing is everything.
Yeah.
And sometimes when something's going on, maybe it's not the right time to bring it up.
This is
right?
true. Yeah.
Maybe you need to wait and do it in a different way, in a different time, with a different kind of energy.
Mm-hmm.
And that way, I know it's been more impactful for me that way than just, you know, right out, go.
Yeah, right. So this episode is super important in the micro, in the household, and what we discover inside ourselves, and when we're interacting with partners. It's, you know, it's one thing to be growing up, you know, in your family environment. You learn a lot there, and then whatever you learn there, you act out in maybe your marriage, and then you discover, you know, brings to divorce maybe or not. You start to discover, okay, I got like shadow aspects of myself that I need to like reveal or to myself and know them and embrace them and know thyself even more so. And then we can attract, you know, maybe if we're divorced, we start to attract somebody who is more in line with us. And we also move out into the workforce and we adapt and we are better human beings in the whole of like the rest of our lives. But Absolutely. The intimate relationships that we have start to form what we're going to be into the world. And maybe, you know, whatever our life path is, whatever is going to bring us fulfillment, however we're going to serve, you know, the global whatever.
And I did want to bring up the shadow because we are going to be touching upon it. And I don't want people to think of it as negative. Absolutely not. On the contrary, when you take a step back and go deep into yourself and look at those aspects that maybe, you know, get people upset at what you do, then you have to understand, you know, what are the reasons behind that? And you start like digging into that shadow, and what you get is gold. So you take that and you transmute it and you balance your energy, and it's beautiful. We have so much planned for you guys. You have no idea. We're having so much fun putting this together. I
have a weird energy story. This was, which reminds me of the gold, like your shadow is gold.
Yes.
So years ago, I was taking a Reiki training. Reiki is laying on of hands. I forgot the type of Reiki. I can't think of it. It was a special type of Reiki anyways, and I forget what it was. It's been so long. But I was getting attuned, and what happens is, you know, your teacher kind of brings in universal life, a certain energy or whatever. And then, I don't know, you're supposed to be somehow like better and enlightened or whatever. It's all this, you know, new age stuff. Yeah. But anyways, when I left, I had told her, I said, you know, I'm having a lot of dark dreams. And I was having, this was during the September 11th kind of stuff. And I was seeing a lot of crazy stuff in dreams, and some of it appeared to me in reality. And so this reality thing, after I left from her and telling her about it, I've been seeing a lot of shadowy things that kind of appear almost real. So I'm leaving the place, and this is me getting in tune with my shadow. That's basically all this was. But you get it sometimes when you really start to learn about yourself. You see dark dreams, energy. They're kind of like horror shows in your mind, like maybe, you know, like demons and stuff, because you can kind of, well, there's, you know, you have the devils and you have the angels. Well, there was a lot of that going on in my head.
Wow, so, I've never had that happen.
It was, yeah, like, and some of it was like freaky, felt real. But anyways, this really freaked me out. So I leave her building. Now, this is real life. It's not a dream, all right? And a downpour happens. Okay. And I'm driving in my car. I pull out of the driveway, and then I go to this stop sign, and it's pouring, and there's light. And this person, like, it looked like the Grim Reaper. You know, like when somebody's got the hood on.
Yes.
And stuff, has the hood on.
I remember you telling me.
And is gliding. I was like, where are the feet? I mean, I was literally trying to, because it's pouring, but the windshield wiper is going crazy. And I'm watching, and I'm like, oh my God. And it looks like they're gliding across the street. But the key thing, it was just this black like coat. Didn't see any legs, nothing. All right. but saw a bag and it was all gems on the outside. Like somebody would put like, you know, rubies on it
Oh,
and
wow.
sapphires.
My spot bag.
Yeah, it was like crazy.
Oh my gosh.
And then I'm like, oh my God. And then, you know, then you have to look at the light because, you know, like and I'm like looking and I'm like, where did they go? And I'm like, I don't see them anymore. And I'm like, did that really happen?
Oh my
You know, it
goodness.
was such a freak show, but that was my shadow saying, yeah, there's gems in there. And that's the way I looked at it after that. But when it first happened, man, whoa.
That's an impactful story.
Oh, tell me, I've never
tell everybody
it.
when you start getting into your shadow, because I've done a lot of shadow work and I've never had the experience that Shelley had. So everybody has their own thing, you know.
Yeah, right.
Yes. I mean, it's our own psyche. So
yeah,
it depends. Were you watching a lot of horror shows or something?
No, I really think that was a real person that walked across the street. I don't know like where they went. It was so
I remember you telling me
like that.
Yeah,
it was a real person, but they had like the black, it was like the Grim Reaper, and they had a bag that was all bejeweled, you know, like all bejeweled decorated on the outside with all these like colorful stones. And I'm like, and it was right after I, you know, had an attunement, and I'm like, no, I wasn't drinking, I wasn't smoking marijuana, or like, you know, like I wasn't high, you know, or anything like that. It was real. You know, like I just was like, it's so funny, right?
Wow. No. Yeah, things like that happen. But we have to become aware. Our awareness of ourselves is key for our development. And that's what we're trying to share with you guys today. Yeah.
So I have a little meditation. It's a heart meditation or a visualization. This can be done by yourself. You would want to do it, you know, like not driving.
No, don't drive.
No, you want to be at home and comfortable, but you can also do it with a partner. And it's really about like if you're having communication problems or anything like that, you could do it with your child even. Or you could do it in a mirror. If you're single and maybe you're coming through a divorce and you're trying to heal your heart and you still care about your partner or whatever, which obviously that never ends. I think we always care about somebody that was a significant other.
Yeah, always have a special place. Exactly.
Yeah, always have a special place for them. But this is something that you could easily do, and it's very simple. And actually, Shelley and I could do it with each other. And it's an eye gazing and heart. What you do is you place your hand out and pretend that it's on, or you can put it on your partner's heart. But if you don't have a partner, you can do it in a mirror and do it with yourself, or you can visualize that partner in front of you in a mirror and you eye gaze at one another. And so you have one hand on your heart and you're making a connection to your own heart. And then the hand that is up facing the other person is receiving through your hand that love. And so the thought that's going, and then you eye gaze, which sometimes is really challenging for people, especially if, say, maybe in your marriage, you're you know, things aren't doing great or whatever, but you want to reconnect with your spouse. This is a great way to do it, and just eye gaze and get in touch with, because you can see the soul through the eyes. So you know, what we could do is look into our eyes, and then I'm going to send out through my heart unconditional love towards you.
Okay.
And then you receive it without expectation. And then you send, and I receive without expectation. Receive without expectation, but give unconditionally. And that's just, you just get this flow coming through the eyes, which is the center of, actually it's a seat of a soul here. And you're expressing love, but no need to return, but then you're giving love to the other person. And if you're eye gazing too, and looking at the person and sending them love, and then hopefully they're going to feel it.
I do. I feel it.
Yeah. And you could do this. You can actually do this through Zoom.
You can. You can. You can feel energy through Zoom. This is really nice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you can make these connections energetically, and it's very powerful if you are having difficulty communicating with your partner, or if you're overcoming, you know, trauma or divorce. And even if that person isn't willing, you will still touch their energy, and you will see your own self. You'll love yourself in a different light, because all the shadowy stuff comes up, especially if you look in a mirror, if you're doing it alone.
Right.
So it can be done with a partner or alone. And you can be sending yourself love and receiving love unconditionally.
I love this. This is so beautiful.
Yeah, simple. And this
It
is a
is.
tantric exercise. So it's funny, when, the old days, we used to think tantra is like just sex, like
Right, exactly.
sex, but it's not. It's all about connecting these energy cords with one another, and really feeling and tapping in intuitively with one another, and energetically with one another, and really developing a heightened sense of yourself and the other. And you really become more sensitive, more compassionate, more loving. So many good things. And then you're increasing, all the good hormones, which are dopamine, which promote youth. So why wouldn't you want to do this? And then, you get into this whole sacred sensuality and sexuality, where you can start to create and manifest things in your life, meaning attract, which we talked about in our last episode. So
I feel delicious. Thank you for the love, sister. I love it.
You're welcome. Love you, girlfriend. And let's just get a little ha.
I love that. Gets me into my energy groove.
Yeah, I thought it would be really funny. I mean, this is I said at the beginning of this show, this is the first of two parts. We're going to get into how do you bring, this sexy stuff and like this tantra and this loving kind of energy, and whatever it is that you're mixing it up with your spouse, and how do you get that, if it's all really good and positive, how do you get it into, the work and into your career, and use that energy as a force to create.
Yes.
Well, we're going to be talking about that in our next episode.
Yes, we are. Get ready.
Yeah, right?
Yes.
Can't even wait. So our next show is going to, dive really into the macro level. We talked about the micro level. That's the individual and how we work in an individual way. The macro is, when we start going external into the world, and then that expands, it's this whole ripple effect, and it expands into companies and beyond, and we discover or allow our soul purpose to manifest into the world in every area of our life by taking a 360-degree life view and learn to navigate through that internal journey. And if we can bring businesses that kind of, and if we're entrepreneurs or leaders in the community, if we can come from that place, from our foundations in our tribe, our tribe meaning our family, and we can bring that out into the world when we have a healthy family life, and then bring that into our careers, oh boy, what a world we could create.
And that's what we're trying to do. Our 360 movement. Yeah. Absolutely. I'm so alive.
I know, right?
Yeah. Great show.
Yeah, so I want to thank you for joining this episode. This was the first of two parts on getting naked and, shedding the illusions. And if you enjoyed the show, please follow us or subscribe on iTunes. It would be really great if you left a review. We'd love to hear. And, please give us 5 stars.
Please. We are, a lot of people are listening to us, and we're like, yes, tell us more. Tell us what you want to hear.
Yes.
And let us know what you think, because we're here to help, create more content that is specific to what you'd like for us to share with you.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, baby.
Yeah, and stay tuned for next time. We're going to really get naked.
So this is the Evolve 360 show with
Cheli Grace
and Shelley Devine. Thanks so much for listening.